So, on a broad level, can you explain what fetal programming is to the listeners out there?
Yeah. So, kind of on a technical, subject, it's basically the restructuring or the change in structure of the DNA helix, right? And so we don't really change those DNA genes, but whenever some type of insult happens, there's a change in the methylation portion of that, which changes the structures. And really, all it's doing is taking those particular genes and it's upregulating them or downregulating them. It could be turning them off or turning them on. And so ultimately, that's what epigenetics or fetal programming is. It's not a change in the genes, but what you do see is you do see a change in the expression of those genes. So, for instance, if you have cattle that are really high marbled and they go through some environmental insult, nutritional insult, especially for a long period of time or a specific time within the gestational cycle, then you can actually down-regulate those cattle so they don't marble near as well, just because they don't produce as many adipose tissue.
Okay. So, I mean, you touched on it a little bit. I really appreciate that example, but can you share a little bit more about how this has an impact and is such an important topic for the entire beef supply chain from ranchers to feeders to the packer to the consumer, even?
Yeah, so if you just think about a producer's perspective, today, we've increased the quality of cattle across the country in a tremendous way through genetic selection, genetic testing, and then matching genetics and things of that nature. And so, even though a bull may have all the genetic merit for something, but that bull, for some reason, had some type of environmental or nutritional insult during during gestation. Well, potentially he may not be able to express those genes near as well as he otherwise might. So they don't ever reach their genetic potential, right? And so that's potentially on the bull side that you just paid $8,000-$10,000 for to really increase the quality of the cattle that you're producing. And so, that $10,000 bull may be worth 5,000 and worth 4,000 at that point in time, right? So, having cattle that can reach their genetic potential is extremely important. Plus, then you have his offspring, right? So you paid a lot of money for a bull, and he may be perfect and he can do the whole thing, but if those cows that he's bred to, same deal, has some type of environmental insult, nutritional insult, and those offspring or go through some type of epigenetic change or epigenetic event, then again, they're not going to reach their genetic potential that you paid for. And so ultimately, just from the producer's standpoint, you could have a dilution of the value of those calves just because of the way we handle those cows during the wintertime, during the summertime, whenever those particular insults and events happen. And so that's just that side of it, right? But those calves also may not wean and they may not produce near as well or wean near as heavy as they should. And so that's a loss of income as well to a producer. There's also plenty of evidence that cattle that go through these epigenetic events also can have an impact on their health, increase in mortality, increase in morbidity as well on those cattle. So that's an automatic loss. And then much of that loss in some of the data would indicate that actually happens before weaning. So you get a live calf on the ground. But for whether it's through diarrhea, whether it's through other health events, a lot of those cattle have a higher, degree of mortality than say their counterparts that their dams were treated, or didn't have those particular epigenetic events. So, from winging weight to health, and if those guys are going to be able to keep those cattle and take them all the way to the feed yard, then we have this whole aspect of do they actually uh, have as good a yield, carcass yield as we would want them to, because maybe during that particular time, we didn't have the right muscle development, things of that nature, because they were stressed in a particular, especially the middle of gestation. so they don't yield as well. So there's less red meat yield. That affects the producer. That affects the whole packing plan, and affects the price of meat ultimately. If it was a wide world event type situation, which that's really not the case. But so that can affect all aspects, of the business. There's evidence too that just growth performance isn't always as good, and so that can affect the overall lifetime performance of that particular calf, and that's going to affect every single event in there. The other side, from a producer standpoint, even on the female side, is you also have negative effects on reproduction. There's been information shown that heifers that come out of some type of a nutritional event, uh, especially for a long period of time in those dams, can have a reduced lifetime oocyte actual number. So they actually have less eggs that they can actually, you know, fertilize and become pregnant with. And so, does that affect lifetime fertility of those particular heifers and those particular cows? Other, earlier work would have shown anywhere from a 15 to 20% reduction in heifers becoming pregnant compared to their counterparts. And so, again, that just goes back to number that affects, the number of cattle that are out there to be sold for a producer and even for the industry. I mean, you can take where we're at today, where we're short cattle. If you had very many of those situations in the country, well, that just reduces our numbers even further. So, epigenetics and fetal programming can affect cattle in numerous fashions, right? And from health to performance to the quality of the cattle, quality grade of the cattle, the performance of the cattle, and reproduction of cattle. So it covers a wide array of factors in the beef industry, and a lot of that's just going to be dependent on where that nutritional insult occurred within the gestational cycle. Was it first trimester, middle, in the second trimester, third trimester? All those have a different impact on specific things in those offspring. And so the other factor is just how long that event and how severe that event will be, right, from a nutritional standpoint. Or environmental, something like heat stress has shown to have very, very similar type of effects. So it affects every segment of our industry through different factors, physiological factors of that animal.